The gunshot echoed across the dusty plains of Sweetwater Creek, startling Nora Adams from her restless sleep. For a moment, she thought it was another nightmare about the war, but the pre-dawn light filtering through her cabin window reminded her that reality was often worse than dreams. 3 years had passed since her husband, Jeremiah, rode off to fight in the Civil War, and 18 months since the last letter arrived promising his return. The calendar read June 1867, and Nora had begun to accept the truth her heart refused to acknowledge: Jeremiah wasn't coming home. Pulling her shawl tightly around her shoulders, Nora pushed open the cabin door and peered into the golden-pink dawn. Another shot rang out, closer this time. She grabbed the shotgun her father had gifted her on her wedding day and moved cautiously toward the barn where her only milk cow, Bessie, was lowing nervously. "Who's there?" she called, her voice stronger than she felt. "I'm armed and I know how to use this. Madam, I don't mean no harm." A deep voice called back, "Just trying to scare off a coyote that was eyeing your livestock." A tall figure emerged from behind the barn, hands raised slightly. The rising sun silhouetted his broad shoulders and the unmistakable shape of a cowboy hat. As he stepped closer, Nora kept her shotgun steady, though she lowered it slightly when she saw he'd holstered his pistol. "Name's Quinn Quincy," he said, removing his hat to reveal sandy brown hair and a face weathered by sun and wind. His eyes, a clear blue like the Texas sky after rain, regarded her with respect. "Most folks call me Quinn. I work for the Triple R Ranch about 5 miles east, was riding fence line when I spotted that coyote heading toward your property." Nora didn't lower her shotgun completely. Sweetwater Creek had seen its share of drifters and outlaws since the war ended. "I appreciate the concern, Mr. Quincy, but I can handle my own troubles." A smile tugged at his lips. "Never doubted it for a second, madam, just doing what any decent neighbor would." Something in his earnest expression made Nora relax slightly. She hadn't had a proper conversation with anyone except the general store owner in town for weeks. "Nora Adams," she offered finally, "this is my place. Mighty fine homestead, Mrs. Adams, your husband around." His eyes scanned the property, noting the state of disrepair the fence had fallen into, the untended fields beyond. Nora's throat tightened. "He went to war, never came home." Quinn's expression softened, and he placed his hat back on his head respectfully. "I'm sorry to hear that." Too many good men lost. An awkward silence fell between them, broken only by the hungry bleating of Nora's goats. "I should tend to my animals," Nora said finally. Quinn nodded. "Of course, I'll be on my way then." He turned toward a chestnut mare grazing nearby, then hesitated. "Mrs. Adams, I don't mean to overstep, but that fence won't keep predators out for long. If you'd allow it, I could come back after my shift ends and mend it for you." Nora's pride wanted to refuse, but practicality won out. "I can't pay you." "Wasn't asking for payment," he said simply. "Just being neighborly." After a moment's consideration, Nora nodded. "I'll have supper ready, least I can do." Quinn touched the brim of his hat. "That's mighty kind. I'll be back before sundown." True to his word, Quinn returned as the afternoon light turned golden. From her kitchen window, Nora watched him work efficiently, replacing broken posts and tightening wire. His movements were precise, economical, nothing wasted. He reminded her of Jeremiah in that way, though they looked nothing alike. Jeremiah had been dark-haired and slight, quick with a joke and a smile. Quinn seemed more reserved, his strength quiet but undeniable. Nora set the table with her best dishes, a wedding gift from her mother that rarely saw use anymore. She'd made a rabbit stew with vegetables from her small garden and cornbread that filled the cabin with its homey scent. When Quinn knocked at the door, she suddenly felt nervous, smoothing her apron and touching her hair. "Come in," she called, turning to stir the stew one last time. Quinn ducked through the doorway, his tall frame making the cabin seem smaller. He'd removed his hat and washed up, his hair still damp at the temples. "Smells wonderful, Mrs. Adams," he said, standing awkwardly until she gestured him to a chair. "Please call me Nora," she said, serving the stew. "And it's nothing fancy, just what I had on hand. After trail rations and my own poor cooking, this is a feast." He waited until she sat before picking up his spoon. They ate in comfortable silence for a while, the kind that settles between people who don't feel the need to fill every moment with words. Finally, Quinn spoke. "How long have you been on your own, if you don't mind my asking?" Nora set down her spoon. "Jeremiah left in '64. His last letter came in January of last year." She swallowed hard. "The war's been over 2 years now. I've accepted he's not coming back, though no one's ever brought word of his fate." Quinn nodded solemnly. "I was in the war too, Texas cavalry, saw too much death to last several lifetimes." "Yet here you are, mending fences for war widows," Nora said with a sad smile. "Just doing what needs doing." He finished his stew. "This land's too harsh for anyone to go it alone for long. We all need neighbors willing to lend a hand." After supper, Quinn helped her clear the table, his large hands unexpectedly gentle with her mother's china. Standing beside him at the wash basin, Nora realized how long it had been since she'd had company, how isolated she'd become in her grief. "The fence should hold now," Quinn said as he prepared to leave. "But there's other work needs doing around here. That barn roof won't last another winter." Nora folded her arms. "Are you offering charity, Mr. Quincy?" "No, madam," he replied seriously. "I'm offering help. There's a difference." "And what would you get in return?" The question came out sharper than she intended. Quinn looked her straight in the eye. "Good company. A decent meal now and then. The knowledge I'm doing right by a neighbor." He paused. "I know what it's like to come back from war to nothing, Nora. Sometimes all we can do is help each other rebuild." Something in his words reached past Nora's defenses. "I work these fields myself, tend my animals, keep this place going because it was Jeremiah's dream. I won't abandon it. Never suggested you should." Quinn placed his hat on his head. "I admire your determination, but accepting help doesn't diminish your strength." After he left, Nora stood in the doorway watching his figure disappear into the twilight. For the first time in months, she felt something other than grief or determination, a small flicker of something she wasn't ready to name. True to his word, Quinn returned the following Sunday. He brought tools and supplies loaded on a small wagon and spent the day repairing her barn roof. Nora worked alongside him, passing nails and holding boards, surprised at how naturally they fell into a rhythm together. When the August heat became unbearable, they sat in the shade of the oak tree beside the cabin, drinking cool water from the well. Sweat plastered Quinn's shirt to his broad shoulders, and Nora found herself noticing the strong lines of his forearms as he rolled up his sleeves. "You're good at this," she commented, nodding toward the half-repaired roof. "Worked as a carpenter's apprentice before the war," Quinn explained. "Seemed like a lifetime ago now. Why cowboying instead of carpentry after you returned?" Quinn's expression grew distant. "Couldn't stand being cooped up indoors after years of fighting. Needed sky above me, a horse beneath me." He looked at her. "What about you? You're not from around these parts originally." Nora shook her head. "Philadelphia. I met Jeremiah when he came east for business. He painted such a picture of Texas that I fell in love with it before I ever set foot here." She smiled at the memory. "He promised me adventure and a beautiful life. For a while we had it." "You've done him proud," Quinn said quietly, "keeping this place going against all odds." "Some days I wonder why I bother," Nora admitted. "Other days I can't imagine being anywhere else." In the weeks that followed, Quinn became a regular visitor at the Adams homestead. He never came empty-handed, always bringing something the ranch could spare or that Nora needed. Seeds for her garden, a repaired plow, fresh beef when they slaughtered at the Triple R. In return, Nora fed him Sunday dinners and sometimes sent him home with pies or preserves. The townspeople noticed. Nora endured the whispers when she went to town for supplies, the raised eyebrows and meaningful glances. Mrs. Hollister, the preacher's wife, cornered her outside the general store one September afternoon. It's not proper, a widow entertaining a single man, she said, her lips pinched in disapproval. People are talking. People always talk, Nora replied evenly. Mr. Quincy is a neighbor helping another neighbor. Nothing improper about Christian charity. If you say so, Mrs. Hollister sniffed, but a respectable woman would consider her reputation. Nora loaded her purchases into her wagon, anger burning in her chest. A respectable woman would mind her own affairs and not cast aspersions on others. Despite her brave words, the encounter troubled Nora. That Sunday, when Quinn arrived with a new milk pail to replace her dented one, she was more reserved than usual. Quinn noticed immediately. Something wrong. Nora busied herself with the stew pot. Just tired is all, Nora. His voice was gentle but insistent. I've come to know you well enough to tell when something's bothering you, she sighed, turning to face him. Mrs. Hollister thinks our arrangement is improper, says people are talking. Quinn's expression darkened. I'm sorry. The last thing I want is to cause you trouble. You haven't, Nora said quickly. You've been nothing but kind and helpful. Still, Quinn set his hat on the table, running a hand through his hair. Maybe I should stop coming around so often. The thought of returning to her solitary existence made Nora's heart sink. Is that what you want? No, he answered honestly, but I won't be the cause of gossip that hurts you. Nora straightened her shoulders. I don't care what they say. This is my life, my property. I'll associate with whom I please. Quinn studied her face. You're sure? I'm sure I don't want to go back to having no one to talk to but my goats, she said with a small smile. Relief washed over his features. They're not the best conversationalists, I'll grant you that. As autumn painted the landscape in golds and reds, Nora found herself looking forward to Quinn's visits more than she cared to admit. He brought news from the outside world, stories from the ranch, and most importantly, his steady, reassuring presence. When he smiled, a rare but transformative event, Nora felt a warmth inside that had nothing to do with her cookstove. One crisp October evening, they sat on her porch watching the sunset paint the sky in spectacular colors. Quinn had split enough firewood to last her through winter, and they were enjoying a well-deserved rest. Winter's coming early this year, Quinn observed, looking at the heavy clouds gathering in the distance. I can feel it in my bones. Your bones tell you that, do they? Nora teased. Mock if you will, but my left knee hasn't been wrong about weather since Shiloh. Nora's smile faded. Quinn rarely spoke of specific battles. Were you wounded there? Quinn nodded, his expression growing distant. Took a Confederate bullet, nearly lost the leg. He absently rubbed his knee. Sometimes I wonder if the man who shot me made it home to his family. Do you wish he hadn't? Nora asked softly. No, Quinn replied without hesitation. I've seen enough death. After a while, you realize most men on both sides were just trying to survive, to get back to the people they loved. He glanced at her. Like your Jeremiah, Nora looked out at the darkening landscape. Sometimes I wonder if he's out there somewhere, if he lost his memory or couldn't find his way back. You've never had confirmation of his death, no. His company commander wrote that he was missing after Vicksburg, presumed dead. Nora wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders. For the first year I was certain he'd return. The second year I prayed he would. Now, she trailed off. Now, Quinn prompted gently. Now I've accepted he's gone, but I still feel guilty when I catch myself being happy. The admission cost her, but it felt important to say aloud. Quinn was quiet for a long moment. I don't think the dead want us to stop living, Nora. I think they'd want us to find moments of happiness where we can. Their eyes met in the gathering dusk, and something unspoken passed between them. Nora looked away first, her heart beating faster. I should get supper on the table, she said, rising quickly. Quinn stood too, reaching out to steady her when she stumbled slightly. His hand on her arm was warm, strong. Nora, the moment was broken by the distant sound of hoofbeats. They both turned to see a rider approaching at a gallop, the Triple R brand visible on the horse's flank, even in the fading light. That's Tommy, one of our hands, Quinn said, tension evident in his voice. No one rode that hard unless something was wrong. The young cowboy reined in his lathered horse. "Quinn, thank the Lord I found you. There's trouble at the ranch. Rustlers hit the north pasture. Mr. Richardson's been shot." Quinn was already moving toward his horse. "How bad?" "Doc's with him, but it don't look good." "The boss wants every man back. We're riding after the rustlers at first light." Quinn turned to Nora, conflict clear on his face. "I have to go." "Of course," she said, though fear clutched at her heart. She'd seen too many men ride away never to return. "Be careful." "I'll come back when I can," he promised, swinging into his saddle with fluid grace. Nora watched him gallop away, Tommy at his side, until darkness swallowed them. Only then did she realize he'd left his hat on her porch rail. 2 weeks passed with no word from Quinn. Nora tried to focus on her daily chores, but worry nagged at her constantly. News traveled slowly in the scattered community, and all she'd heard were rumors rustlers from across the border, a gunfight, casualties on both sides. When the first winter storm blew in, bringing biting wind and sleet that rattled against her windows, Nora found herself holding Quinn's forgotten hat, wondering if he was somewhere safe and warm. The thought that he might be lying wounded or worse in some remote canyon made her stomach clench with fear. On the third day of the storm, as darkness fell early, Nora was startled by a pounding at her door. Heart racing, she grabbed her shotgun before cautiously approaching. "Who's there?" She called. "Nora, it's me." Quinn's voice, weak but unmistakable. She flung open the door to find him leaning heavily against the frame, his coat crusted with ice, his face pale beneath several days' growth of beard. A makeshift bandage, dark with blood, wrapped his left arm. "My God, Quinn." She helped him inside, alarmed at how heavily he leaned on her. "What happened? Are you all right?" "Been better," he managed a ghost of a smile. "Sorry to impose, but my horse went lame about a mile back. Yours was the closest shelter I knew of." Nora guided him to a chair near the fire. "You're not imposing. Let me look at that arm." While she heated water and gathered clean bandages, Quinn told her about the pursuit of the rustlers, the ambush in a narrow canyon, the shootout that followed. Mr. Richardson had survived his wounds. 2 of the rustlers hadn't been as fortunate. "We recovered most of the cattle," Quinn finished as Nora carefully unwrapped his injured arm. "But it cost us." The wound was a deep graze along his upper arm, red and angry, but thankfully not showing signs of serious infection. Nora cleaned it thoroughly, applied a poultice of herbs she'd learned to use from an old woman in town, and bandaged it with gentle hands. "You should have seen a proper doctor," she scolded, though her voice was soft with concern. "Didn't want to delay getting back," Quinn admitted. His eyes held hers. "I promised I'd return." Something in his gaze made Nora's breath catch. She busied herself with putting away her supplies. "You need food and rest. I'll make you something to eat." Quinn caught her hand as she turned away. "Nora," his voice was low, serious. "When I was pinned down with bullets flying past my head, all I could think about was getting back here. To you." Nora's heart hammered in her chest. "Quinn, you don't need to say anything," he interrupted gently. "I know it's too soon, that you're still grieving. I just wanted you to know that in all the chaos since the war, the only peace I've found has been here with you." Tears pricked at Nora's eyes. "I care for you too," she whispered, "but I feel so guilty, like I'm betraying Jeremiah's memory." "Loving again doesn't erase what you had with him," Quinn said, his thumb tracing circles on the back of her hand. "Nothing ever could." The storm raged outside, but inside Nora's small cabin, something fragile and precious was taking root. That night, Quinn slept on a pallet by the fire while Nora lay awake in her bed, listening to his deep, even breathing, wondering how this quiet cowboy had slipped past her defenses so completely. Morning brought clear skies and a decision. As they shared coffee at her small table, Nora spoke the words that had kept her awake. "I think it's time I visited the county office to officially register Jeremiah as deceased." Her voice trembled slightly. "It's been over 3 years. I need to accept that he's gone and move forward with my life." Quinn's eyes were gentle. "Are you sure that's what you want?" Nora nodded. "It feels like the right time. Would you come with me? I don't think I can face it alone. I'll stand beside you as long as you'll have me, Quinn said simply, reaching across to take her hand. The trip to the county seat took 2 days by wagon. They stayed at a respectable boarding house, Quinn in one room, Nora in another. Though the landlady's disapproving glances made it clear their traveling together had already been noted. The county clerk was efficient but cold, shuffling papers and asking questions in a monotone that reduced Jeremiah's life to dates on a form. When did he leave? When was his last communication? Did she have any evidence of his death? No body was recovered, Nora explained, her voice steady despite the pain lancing through her heart. His commanding officer wrote that he was presumed killed at Vicksburg. That's not confirmation, the clerk said, peering at her over his spectacles. Without a body or an official military death notice, we can only file this as a presumptive death. You'll need to wait 7 years from his disappearance before it becomes legal. 7 years, Nora's composure cracked. But it's already been over 3, and the war has been over for the law is the law, Mrs. Adams, the clerk interrupted. Many soldiers have returned years after being thought dead. Prisoners of war, men with injuries or memory loss. The 7-year rule protects everyone involved. Quinn, who had been standing silently beside Nora, stepped forward. Surely there's some consideration for her situation. She's managing a homestead alone. The clerk shook his head. I sympathize, but I can't change the law. Mrs. Adams remains legally married until either her husband returns or 7 years have passed since he was last known to be alive. Outside the office, Nora fought back tears of frustration. 3.5 more years. What am I supposed to do until then? Quinn's face was troubled. I didn't realize the legal waiting period was so long. He hesitated. Nora, this changes things. If you're still legally married, I know what people will say if we continue our friendship. The words seemed inadequate for what had grown between them. Quinn looked down at her, his expression serious. I don't care what people say about me, but your reputation matters. Your standing in the community. Nora thought about the whispers that would follow her, the judgment in the eyes of women like Mrs. Hollister. But then she thought about returning to her solitary existence, the long, empty evenings without Quinn's quiet company. I care for you, she said finally. More than I thought possible after Jeremiah, but I won't ask you to wait nearly 4 years for me. It wouldn't be fair. Quinn took her hands in his. What if I want to wait? What if I believe what we could have is worth enduring a few wagging tongues? Hope flickered in Nora's chest. You would do that, knowing we can't, that I can't. She couldn't bring herself to say the words. Nora Adams, I've survived a war. I can certainly survive being your friend and neighbor until the law catches up with what we both know in our hearts. His eyes were steady, certain. If you'll have me. The journey back to Sweetwater Creek seemed shorter somehow, filled with quiet conversations about their childhoods, their dreams, the small details of their lives they hadn't yet shared. Quinn told her about growing up on a small farm in Kentucky, losing his parents to typhoid when he was 16, making his way west to find work. Nora described her sheltered upbringing in Philadelphia, her parents' horror when she announced she was marrying a Texan and moving west. My mother cried for a week, she recalled with a sad smile. She was certain I'd be scalped by Indians or shot by outlaws within a month. And here you are, years later, having survived far worse than either, Quinn observed. When they arrived back at her homestead, Nora was surprised to find her vegetable garden weeded and her livestock tended. A note pinned to her door explained, "Folks from church saw to your place while you were gone. That's what neighbors do." Not all the community judges us, Quinn said, reading the note over her shoulder. No, just the loudest voices, Nora replied. Their new understanding brought both comfort and challenges. Quinn still visited regularly, helping with repairs and heavy work around the homestead. But now they were careful to conduct their friendship within the bounds of propriety. He never stayed after dark. They were never alone inside her cabin with the door closed, and when they attended the occasional community gathering, they maintained a respectful distance. Still, tongues wagged. Some of the more rigid church ladies cut Nora dead when she went to town. The general store owner's wife refused to serve her, forcing her husband to step in with embarrassed apologies. But there were others who understood, who had seen too much loss and grief not to recognize genuine affection when they saw it. Mrs. Beatty, who had lost 2 sons in the war, pressed Nora's hand after Sunday service. "Life's too short and too hard out here to deny yourself comfort when you find it, dear. Hold on to your cowboy, he's one of the good ones." Winter gave way to spring, and with it came new challenges. A band of Comanche raided farms to the north, driving off livestock and burning homesteads. Rumors of an impending large-scale attack sent many of the more isolated families fleeing to town for protection. "You should come to the Triple R until this passes," Quinn urged Nora one afternoon in early April. "Richardson's offered shelter to any women and children who need it." "I'm not abandoning my home," Nora said firmly, continuing to knead bread dough with more force than necessary. "This place is all I have left of Jeremiah. I won't run from it." Quinn's jaw tightened. "Your life is worth more than this plot of land, Nora." "It's not just land," she shot back. "It's everything we worked for, everything we dreamed of building together." "And what would Jeremiah say if he knew you were risking your life to hold on to it?" Quinn demanded. "Would he want you to die defending empty fields?" The question struck home, and Nora's hands stilled in the dough. "That's not fair," Quinn's expression softened. "No, it wasn't. I'm sorry." He moved closer, though he was careful not to touch her. "I'm afraid for you, Nora, the thought of something happening to you when I'm not here to help." "I survived before you came along," she reminded him, but there was no bite in her words. "I know you did. You're the strongest person I've ever met." His eyes held hers, but even the strongest need help sometimes. In the end, they compromised. Nora agreed to sleep at the Triple R ranch house, returning each day to tend her animals and fields. Quinn arranged for one of the younger ranch hands to escort her back and forth, and to stay within calling distance while she worked. The ranch house was a revelation to Nora, who had grown used to her simple cabin. Mrs. Richardson, the owner's wife, had furnished it with pieces brought from her family home in Virginia, elegant chairs, a piano, even books and artwork that seemed wildly out of place on the frontier. "My husband thinks I'm foolish to insist on civilization in the wilderness," Mrs. Richardson confided as she showed Nora to a small but comfortable guest room. "But I refuse to let Texas rob me of beauty and refinement." Nora found herself enjoying the companionship of other women after so much isolation. In the evenings, while the men took turns standing watch, the women gathered in the main room to sew, read aloud, or simply talk. For the first time in years, Nora felt part of a community again. Quinn was often absent, riding patrol with the other men, but he made a point of checking on her whenever he returned to the ranch. One evening, he found her on the wide front porch, watching the sunset paint the distant hills in shades of purple and gold. "Beautiful, isn't it?" he said, settling beside her on the porch swing. "It reminds me of why I fell in love with this country," Nora admitted. "Despite everything, there's nowhere else I'd rather be." Quinn studied her profile in the fading light. "Mrs. Richardson says you've been a godsend, helping with the cooking and the children. She wants to know if you'd consider staying on after this trouble passes." Nora turned to him in surprise. "Staying here, at the ranch, as a paid companion and helper," Quinn clarified. "The ranch is prospering, and with 5 children to manage, she's overwhelmed. You'd have a proper room, regular wages, and safety. And my homestead, you wouldn't have to sell it. Just let it lie fallow for a season or 2 until you decide what you want to do." Quinn hesitated. "It would also allow us to see each other without causing talk." The offer was tempting. Life at the Triple R would be easier, safer, and less lonely than her isolated existence. And being near Quinn every day, watching their relationship grow without the constant weight of community judgment. I need to think about it, she said finally. It's a generous offer, but that land means so much to me. Quinn nodded, understanding in his eyes. Take all the time you need. Before Nora could make her decision, fate intervened. The Comanche raid that everyone feared materialized not as a large-scale attack, but as a series of smaller strikes against outlying properties. Nora's homestead, left undefended at night, was one of the first hit. She learned of it from Tommy, the young cowboy who arrived breathless at the ranch house just after dawn. "Miss Nora," he panted, hat in hand. "Your place they hid it in the night, burned the barn, drove off your livestock." Nora's heart sank. The cabin, still standing, but they broke in. Took what they could carry, broke the rest. Tommy looked miserable delivering the news. "I'm sorry, madam." Quinn found her in the stable, saddling her horse with shaking hands. "Nora, wait, let me come with you." "I need to see it," she said, her voice tight with unshed tears. "I need to see what's left, I know, but it's not safe to go alone. The raiders might still be in the area." They rode together in silence, Quinn vigilant, scanning the horizon constantly for signs of danger. As they crested the final hill, Nora gasped at the sight below. The charred remains of her barn sent tendrils of smoke into the morning air. The corral fence was broken, her vegetable garden trampled. The cabin stood, as Tommy had said, but the door hung askew on its hinges. Inside was worse. Her few precious possessions lay broken and scattered, her mother's china smashed, Jeremiah's books torn, even the mattress slashed, its stuffing strewn across the floor. In the midst of the destruction, Nora found herself strangely calm, as if this final blow had pushed her beyond grief into something else entirely. Quinn stood in the doorway, giving her space but ready if she needed him. "I'm so sorry, Nora." She knelt to pick up a frame containing her wedding portrait, the glass shattered but the photograph intact. Jeremiah's smiling face looked back at her, frozen in time, full of hope for a future that would never come to pass. "This is the only thing that matters," she said softly, carefully removing the photograph and folding it into her pocket. "The rest is just things." Quinn stepped forward then, his boots crunching on broken glass. "What do you want to do?" Nora looked around at the remnants of the life she had clung to so desperately. "I want to let go," she said finally. "I've been holding on to ghosts for too long." They salvaged what they could, tools that could be repaired, kitchen implements, clothing that hadn't been destroyed. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, Quinn suggested they return to the ranch before darkness made travel dangerous. "We can come back tomorrow with a wagon for anything else you want to keep," he promised. Nora took a last look at the small cabin that had been her home for 5 years. "No," she said quietly, "I've taken what matters, the rest can stay." Back at the Triple R, Nora accepted Mrs. Richardson's offer of employment. The transition from independent homesteader to companion was not always easy, but the benefits far outweighed the challenges. She had a comfortable room, regular meals, and the security of the well-defended ranch. Most importantly, she had daily contact with Quinn, though they maintained a careful propriety in front of others. Summer brought a measure of peace to the region. The Comanche bands moved north following the buffalo herds, and life at the Triple R settled into a pleasant routine. Nora found unexpected fulfillment in helping with the Richardson children, especially 10-year-old Sarah, who eagerly absorbed Nora's lessons in reading and arithmetic. Quinn continued his duties as foreman, often away for days supervising the ranch hands, but each return brought the quiet joy of reunion. They found moments to be alone walking along the creek that ran behind the ranch house, sitting together on the porch after the household had retired, sharing books and conversations that deepened their understanding of each other. One evening in late August, as they walked beneath a canopy of stars, Quinn stopped beside an ancient oak tree. "I've been thinking," he said, his voice serious, "about us, about the future." Nora's heart quickened. "Oh, I know we still have years to wait before you're legally free. But I want you to know my intentions haven't changed." He took her hand, his calloused fingers gentle against her skin. "When the time comes, if you'll have me, I want to make a life with you, Nora." Tears pricked at Nora's eyes. "I want that too," she whispered. Quinn's smile was visible even in the darkness. "Then I'll wait, however long it takes." He leaned down slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wished. Instead, Nora rose on her tiptoes to meet him. Their first kiss was gentle, tentative, a promise rather than a passion. When they separated, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "I should have done that a long time ago," he murmured. Nora smiled. "We have time," but time, as it turned out, had other plans. September brought the cattle drive, taking Quinn and most of the men north to Kansas with the year's calves. Nora watched them leave with a mixture of pride and anxiety, Quinn's promise to return by Christmas her only comfort. 2 weeks after the drive departed, a stranger rode up to the Triple R. Nora was helping Mrs. Richardson hang laundry when the rider appeared, his horse lathered from hard riding. "I'm looking for Nora Adams," he called, removing his hat. "I was told she might be here." Nora stepped forward, wiping her hands on her apron. "I'm Nora Adams." The stranger dismounted, approaching with a leather satchel clutched in one hand. "My name's Robert Wells, madam. I served with your husband in the 4th Texas Infantry." Nora's world tilted. "You knew Jeremiah?" "Yes, madam. We were captured together at Vicksburg, sent to a prison camp in Illinois." Wells shifted uncomfortably. "I've been trying to find you for some time. Your neighbors in Sweetwater Creek directed me here." Mrs. Richardson touched Nora's arm. "Let's go inside where you can talk properly," she suggested, guiding them toward the house. In the parlor, Wells declined refreshment, clearly anxious to deliver his news. "Mrs. Adams, I was with your husband until the end. He wanted me to find you to tell you he never stopped trying to get home." The room seemed to spin. "The end," Nora repeated faintly. "You're saying he's truly gone?" Wells nodded, his expression grave. "He died in the prison camp, madam, winter of '64. Fever took many of us, but he held on longer than most, always talking about getting back to you and your home." Tears slid down Nora's cheeks unchecked, after so long to finally know for certain. "Why has it taken so long for me to learn this?" she asked, her voice breaking. "The prison records were poorly kept. Many of us were listed under wrong names or not listed at all. When they released us after the surrender, there was chaos." Wells opened his satchel, removing a small bundle wrapped in oilcloth. "I promised Jeremiah I'd bring you these, tell you how much he loved you until the very end." Inside the bundle, Nora found Jeremiah's wedding ring, a lock of his hair tied with string, and several letters he had written but never been able to send. Her fingers trembled as she unfolded the first one. "My dearest Nora," it began. "Another day in this place, but I keep my spirits up by remembering your face, the sound of your laugh, the home we're building together. I will return to you, my love. Hold fast to that promise as I hold fast to your memory." The letters chronicled Jeremiah's captivity, his unwavering determination to survive, his love for Nora burning bright despite the hardships. The final letter, dated December 1864, was written in a shaky hand. "I fear this fever may take me where Confederate bullets could not," he had written. "If it does, know that my last thoughts were of you. Live well, my darling Nora, find happiness again. I release you from any promises to wait for me. Love again if love finds you. That is my final wish." When she finished reading, Nora sat in silence, tears flowing freely. Wells waited respectfully, then stood to leave. "I've fulfilled my promise to your husband, Mrs. Adams. He was a good man, a brave soldier, and a loyal friend. I'm sorry I couldn't bring better news." Nora rose, extending her hand. "Thank you, Mr. Wells. You've given me a gift beyond price certainty, and Jeremiah's final words, I can never repay you." After Wells departed, Nora retreated to her room, clutching Jeremiah's letters to her heart. The grief she felt was different from the aching uncertainty of the past year's cleaner somehow, with the sharp edges of finality but without the haunting questions that had plagued her. That evening, Mrs. Richardson knocked gently on her door. "There's someone else here to see you," she said. A county official. In the parlor, a somber man in a formal suit introduced himself as Judge Peterson from the county court. I understand you received confirmation of your husband's death today, Mrs. Adams. Nora nodded. Yes, a comrade of his brought news and personal effects. Mr. Wells also stopped at the county office before coming here, the judge explained. He provided a sworn affidavit regarding your husband's death. As a witness who was present at the time of death, his testimony is legally sufficient to register Jeremiah Adams as deceased. He placed a document on the table between them. This is the official death certificate. Under the circumstances, you are now legally a widow, free of the 7-year waiting period. Nora stared at the paper, emotions too complex to name washing through her. Thank you, she managed finally. There is also the matter of your property, the judge continued. Your homestead was recorded in both your names. With this certificate, it passes fully to you. You may sell it or retain ownership as you wish. After the judge left, Nora sat alone in the parlor, the death certificate in one hand and Jeremiah's letters in the other. The certainty she had longed for had finally come, but with it a tumult of feelings, grief renewed, relief, guilt, and beneath it all, a tentative hope for the future. Mrs. Richardson found her there as twilight deepened. Would you like me to send word to Quinn? She asked gently. Nora looked up, startled. The cattle drive, they must be halfway to Kansas by now. Tommy's riding to the next town with messages tomorrow. He could telegraph ahead to Dodge City. Quinn would want to know. Nora considered this. No, she decided finally. This is something I need to tell him in person when he returns, but thank you. The autumn months passed slowly. Nora threw herself into her duties at the ranch, finding comfort in routine and in the care of the Richardson children. In the evenings, she read and reread Jeremiah's letters, allowing herself to fully grieve at last. By December, the first winter snows dusted the hills around the Triple R. The cattle drive had been successful, and word came that the men were on their way home, expected to arrive before Christmas. Nora found herself counting the days, alternating between nervousness and anticipation. What would Quinn say when he learned she was legally free? Would his feelings have changed during the months apart? Had hers? The answer came on a cold, clear evening just before Christmas. Nora was helping the children decorate the parlor with pine boughs and ribbon when hoofbeats announced riders approaching. The children rushed to the windows, excited to see their father returning at last. Nora hung back, suddenly uncertain. Through the window, she watched as Quinn dismounted, his tall figure unmistakable, even bundled against the cold. Her heart raced as he looked toward the house, as if sensing her presence. Mrs. Richardson gave her a gentle push. Go on, he's been riding for days to get back to you. Outside, the returning men were greeted with embraces and exclamations of welcome. Nora stepped onto the porch, her shawl pulled tight around her shoulders. Quinn saw her immediately, his tired face transforming with a smile that warmed her despite the December chill. He handed his horse off to a stable boy and crossed to the porch in long strides. Nora, he said simply, his voice rough with emotion. Welcome home, she replied, suddenly shy after the months apart. Quinn studied her face. You look different. Is everything all right? Yes, no, Nora took a deep breath. Could we talk privately? Concern crossed Quinn's features, but he nodded. Of course. They walked together to the small garden house where Mrs. Richardson stored her preserved jars and dried herbs. It was cold but private, illuminated only by the lantern Nora had brought. I received a visitor while you were gone, she began, setting the lantern on a shelf. A man who served with Jeremiah. He was with him when he died. Quinn's expression softened with sympathy. Oh, Nora, I'm so sorry. He died in a prison camp in 1864, Nora continued, her voice steady. He left letters for me. In the last one, he told me to find happiness again, to love again if love found me. Quinn took a step closer, hope kindling in his eyes. And has it found you? Nora nodded, tears threatening despite her smile. It has. It did a long time ago when a cowboy scared off a coyote and offered to mend my fence. Quinn's hands, gentle despite their strength, framed her face. I've thought of you every day since I left, he murmured, counting the miles until I could see you again. I'm legally free now, Nora told him. The county issued Jeremiah's death certificate based on his friend's testimony. Understanding dawned in Quinn's eyes. So there's nothing standing between us anymore. Nothing, Nora agreed, her heart full to bursting. This time when they kissed, there was no hesitation, no holding back. Quinn's arms encircled her, drawing her close as if he never intended to let go. Nora clung to him, feeling as if she had finally come home after a long, difficult journey. When they eventually separated, breathless and smiling, Quinn rested his forehead against hers. "Marry me, Nora," he whispered. "Not because it's proper or expected, but because I love you, because I want to build a life with you." "Yes," Nora answered without hesitation. "Yes, Quinn, I will." They were married on New Year's Day, 1869, in the triple Artiques parlor decorated with evergreen boughs and candles. Mrs. Richardson insisted on making Nora a proper wedding dress, pale blue silk that complemented her eyes. Quinn wore a new black suit that made him look both distinguished and slightly uncomfortable, until he caught sight of his bride and forgot everything else. The entire ranch turned out for the celebration, along with neighbors and even a few faces from Sweetwater Creek, including Mrs. Beatty, who wept happy tears throughout the ceremony. Judge Peterson performed the service, his formal demeanor softening as he pronounced them husband and wife. "You may kiss your bride, Mr. Quincy." Quinn did so with enthusiasm, to the cheers and applause of their assembled friends. The triple Artiques cook outdid himself with the wedding feast, and Mr. Richardson broke out his finest Kentucky bourbon for the toasts. As the evening progressed, Quinn pulled Nora aside to a quiet corner. "I have a wedding present for you," he said, a touch of nervousness in his voice. "I hope you'll approve." He handed her a folded document. Opening it, Nora saw it was a deed to her homestead. "You bought my land." She asked, confused. "Our land," Quinn corrected gently. "I've been saving every penny since I started at the Triple R. Richardson gave me a bonus after the cattle drive, and it was enough to buy materials to rebuild. The barn's already framed up, and the cabin repairs are underway." He watched her face anxiously. "I thought we could make it our home if that's what you want, or we can sell it and start fresh somewhere else." Tears filled Nora's eyes as she realized what he had done, not erasing her past with Jeremiah, but helping her reclaim it and build something new upon its foundation. "Our home," she said softly, tucking the deed into her pocket and taking his hands in hers. "I can't think of anything I want more." Later that night, as they danced beneath the stars on the ranch house porch, Quinn held her close and whispered in her ear, "I meant what I said that day at your homestead. I'll stand beside you as long as you'll have me." Nora looked up at the man who had patiently waited for her, who had understood her grief and helped her find joy again. "Then you'll be standing beside me for a very long time, Quinn Quincy," she promised. "A very long time indeed." Spring found them settled in the rebuilt cabin, the fields plowed and planted, new livestock grazing in the repaired paddocks. Quinn had resigned from the Triple R to work their land full-time, though he still helped his former employer during roundups and cattle drives. One evening, as they sat on their new porch watching the sunset paint the Texas sky in glorious color, Nora rested her head against Quinn's shoulder. "Are you happy?" he asked, his arm tightening around her waist. "Completely," she answered truthfully. "Are you?" Quinn's smile was answer enough, but he spoke anyway. "I found something I never expected when I scared that coyote away from your cow. I found home." Nora thought of the long, difficult journey that had brought them to this moment, a journey marked by loss and grief, but also by resilience and hope. Jeremiah would always have a place in her heart, but Quinn had shown her that love wasn't a finite resource, that her heart had room to grow and encompass new joy. "We both did," she said, taking his hand and placing it gently over her belly, where new life was just beginning to make itself known. And soon our family will too. Quinn's eyes widened in wonder. Nora, are you certain? She nodded, her smile radiant in the golden light. Our child will be born in the autumn, a new beginning for all of us. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the land they now shared, Quinn kissed her with all the tenderness and passion of a man who had found his heart's desire. And Nora, wrapped in the arms of the cowboy who had promised to stand beside her, knew that whatever challenges the future might hold, they would face them together, their love as vast and enduring as the Texas sky above them.